everyone, and thank you all for joining us tonight for our very first E4 Women webinar, E4 Women in Media. Today we'll be delving into the many ways that we can forge our paths to success using the power of media. By the end of today, we hope the experience of our special guest panelists inspire you to grow as an entrepreneurial woman in media and to overcome the many obstacles that are bound to our identities as Asian American women. E4 Women is co-hosted by the San Diego organizations of Asian Culture and Media Alliance and Korean Women's International Network of San Diego. My name is Jasmine Nauta. I am ACMA's digital marketing assistant, and today I am joined by Megan Shimizu.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Shimizu and I'm an associate producer for Asian Voices and an assistant instructor for ACMA's Take One internship. ACMA is a nonprofit organization based in San Diego, California, founded to create a voice of awareness and empowerment for the AAPI community. ACMA hosts various programs including the Take One Media Internship, the Asian Voices television show, and Asian Pacific Community Connection.
Representing ACMA today, we have our discussion moderator, Ms. Kathleen Choi. In addition to 11 years of nonprofit experience, Ms. Choi has over 28 years of background as a business development and marketing executive in the wireless, F&B, food and beverage, and media industry sectors in Korea and the US, dubbed Korean Food and Cultural Ambassador by the media and her fans. Ms. Choi is best known for her TV show, Kathleen's Korean Kitchen on PBS, the first Korean cooking show produced in English in the US. She is the main host and producer of Asian Voices and is a co-owner of Karma Media Productions, specializing in producing content for television and film. You can access her full bio in detail on the ACMA website and on LinkedIn. Ms. Choi, if you want to say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jasmine, for the grand intro, and I look forward to the panel discussion shortly.
Thank you. Co-hosting this event with ACMA is the Korean Women Internationals Network, or KOWIN, of San Diego.
Korean Women's International Network, or KOWIN, was established in 2001 by the Republic of South Korea's Ministry of Gender, Equality, and Family, with a mission to empower Korean women leaders from around the world with business networking opportunities in the support of their advancement in the global community. KOWIN also supports the cultivation of the professional expertise and experience of these successful leaders to inspire and advance the next generation of Korean women everywhere. If you are a Korean American woman residing in San Diego and wish to become a member of KOWIN, please contact us via email or through our Facebook page. 감사합니다.
From KOWIN, we are joined by the West Coast Regional Director, Dr. Susie O. Dr. Susie O has worked for the Los Angeles County District, or LAUSD, since the mid-70s and has since retired after 40-plus years of service in LAUSD. She has remained active in the educational community with part-time teaching at universities, independent educational consulting, and speaking engagements. She received her doctoral degree in educational leadership from USC, or the University of Southern California. She has a special affinity and passion for 3 L's, literacy, learning, and leadership, and is a renowned presenter in educational leadership for school principals and effective teaching and learning for teachers, and language education and parenting skills for parents.
So our event today will be structured as follows. First, we will have questions prepared for individual panelists in each industry, such as marketing or film. Each question will be tailored to highlight the experience of each individual and their industry journey. After, we will have questions for all of the panelists to share their personal answers to. And finally, we'll have our Q&A session where all of our viewers can submit their questions in the Q&A submission box at the bottom of your screen. Please hold all of your questions until the Q&A session, or we will not be able to answer any of these submissions. And without any more delay, Ms. Kathleen Choi will now take over and introduce us to our amazing panelists.
Hi, everyone. I believe we have Dr. Susie O from KOWIN West Coast Director, who will be giving a welcome remark first. So Dr. Susie O.
Well, thank you, Kathleen Choi. I feel so honored and privileged to be invited to this webinar hosted by KOWIN San Diego and Asian Culture Media Alliance. We are here to learn about navigating our path to success using the unifying power of media. Thank you for this learning opportunity to educate and empower all women, especially younger women of Asian Pacific Islander descent. I know we are in for a special treat to be inspired by our outstanding panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Susie O, for joining us today. So without further ado, I'd like to start today's E4 Women in the Media webinar. I'm your moderator, Kathleen Choi. Today, our goal is to create a safe space for us to have an honest dialogue about the important topics regarding not only equality issues that Asian women collectively face in media arts today, but we will discuss how we can empower ourselves by applying media technologies and social media platforms and creating a thriving business, as well as explore new career opportunities in media. Additionally, we will discuss how we can inspire our future generations of young Asian and Pacific Islander women in building them a better tomorrow for them in media arts so they can thrive and achieve their goals and dreams without the cultural, social, and racial barriers that often hold them back from achieving them. With this said, I'm humbled and honored to be joined by a distinguished panel of 6 successful and delightful women who are all inspirational leaders in their respective fields. I'll introduce them in alphabetical order in the order of their first names. Starting with Christine Yu, a Korean-American screenwriter, director, and filmmaker. Christine is known for her award-winning feature film Wedding Palace, which debuted in 2013. She also co-wrote Afro Samurai, an anime series starring Samuel Jackson for Spike and Fuji TV. A former TV news journalist, Phoebe is a multimedia brand journalist, consultant, and marketing strategist who connects brands and consumers through compelling storytelling. She's also a fitness and wellness coach. Phoebe's inspiring story was also featured on season 3 of Asian Voices in case you missed it. Next, the slide. Okay. Next, we have Wendy Kim, author of a best-selling book, Beyond Blending In. Wendy is a public speaker, empowerment coach, and host of a podcast called Beyond Blending In, which empowers women of color to find their voice. Wendy currently serves on ACMA's executive board. Next, we have Melody Tao, an international keynote speaker and social media marketing consultant. Melody is known for her brand marketing, Melody. She was also one of Asian Voices segment hosts in season 2 and is a LinkedIn learning instructor teaching digital marketing courses. Dr. Marisa Pei, best known as the Asian Oprah. Dr. Pei is a psychologist, radio talk show host, public speaker, and author of a best-selling book, 88 Ways to Happiness from Wherever You Are. She currently sits on ACMA's Media Advisory Board, as well as featured on season 3 of Asian Voices. Iris Yamashita, an Academy Award-nominated screenwriter. Iris is recognized for the movie Letters from Iwo Jima, directed by legendary actor and filmmaker Clint Eastwood. She is also on ACMA's Media Advisory Board, and her story was also featured in season 2 of Asian Voices. Let's start off with a couple of questions related to digital marketing and social media, starting with Melody Tao. Hi, Melody.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Thanks for your time in participating in today's webinar, especially since you gave birth to your second child, Millie.
Yes. Yeah, I have a 3-week-old.
Wow. I don't know how you do it, but congratulations once again.
Thank you so much.
All right. First, can you briefly share your story of how, well, when and why you got into the business of social media marketing?
Yeah, so I've been working in social media for over a decade, almost 13 years, which is almost as long as it's been around for business. And I started my career in traditional media. I worked in radio advertising, and I realized that everything was shifting online. And when I realized everything was shifting online, I noticed that more people, including small business owners and individual businesses, started being able to have a voice, to be able to share their message, to be able to share their businesses. And that really intrigued me to get into social media, because I did notice that in a traditional larger media company, not everyone always has a voice. It's usually people that have the most money to pay for advertising or the larger corporations. But with social media, everyone, even small businesses, can have a really large impact.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, can you also briefly mention like why in this digital age, social media is so important? How can we harness its power to create our own presence and grow our business or brand?
Yeah. So especially now when, the state of current affairs, where a lot of things are shut down, people aren't able to go to a lot of places, social media is the way that you can still stay connected to your community, to your customers, to your clients. And it's really important because it is the place where you can still build up your presence despite, places where despite not being physically able to go places. So it gives you a voice. And again, it continues to do that even when you can't physically go anywhere. Also, keeping in mind with social media, you are able to be a resource for people. So if you are a business owner, or if you are someone who works in a profession where you want to help people, you can use social media to really help people by answering their questions before they ask them, by giving them resources, by being that expert and helping people in a way that they need. And you can also customize your message if you have a plan and strategy on how to do that. And that's one of the things that I help my clients do, is I help them customize their message to be able to help their community and their customers.
Right. Thank you for that answer. And then next, I'd like to ask Phoebe, can you also share, first of all, your story of why and how you got into journalism, and why is brand journalism such an important evolution in building a successful business today?
Such a good question. I got into journalism because as a young child, I really wanted to investigate, explore, and have a front seat, to the world, to be able to tell stories. So that's what attracted me to it. As time went on, my role at Channel 10 changed. I was there for about 15 years. Toward the latter part of my career, I became what was called a community affairs specialist. This was really important to me, and I think it's something that I wish I would see more television stations doing today. I connected with the community. I did a lot of the things, Kathleen, like you're doing today, for a television station. So more than ever do we need to see those positive stories. These stories were often only left to the end of the newscast before that position in a storyline of jargon that you might call the kicker, the fluff piece, just a 45-second soundbite, that's it. So it was really important to me to break out when I left from Channel 10 and start brand journalism, which is the ability to tell your story and be the media from your perspective or your corporation's perspective.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we came from a television background, but for a lot of women out there, especially Asian American and Pacific Islander women, are very underrepresented in the media. And so for those who are interested in trying to utilize, brand journalism, I mean, I'm sure they've never even heard of the word. Most of them have not even heard of the word. Where can they start? I mean, any tips or suggestions on how they can get comfortable, utilizing social media to broadcast their stories and messages?
Yeah. Well, I mean, getting comfortable with social media and getting comfortable with doing things like this Zoom, we can say one good thing came out of COVID, and that's that people are getting in front of cameras. They're doing it from their living rooms, from their bedrooms. The more times you do this, the better at it you get. What I like to say is for people who want to break into TV, or they want to, become a blogger or a podcaster. I consult and teach on how to become a podcaster, which is a great venue for getting your story out. But really it starts with, what is your story? Why are you doing this? What do you have to tell? And why should anybody listen? Once you address those questions, we can start to craft a strategy that builds on that. You know, whether you're trying to do topical news and you're trying to stay up on the election and COVID and unemployment, you know, or you're trying to maybe go a meditational route, whatever that is, you've got to know the real reason and then start to identify who you're trying to speak to and really start to hone your story in and deliver specifically to that audience. What makes it so great is that the power of this kind of communication, you begin to see a real person. Now, that's not without saying that there's some negative sides because things get manipulated all the time. And I'm frustrated by what we see today, where we see these little sound bites and these clips more than ever scattered throughout Facebook that are depicting something that is entirely wrong. And we all know the power of post-production. So I like to say, speak your truth, share your truth, and be passionate about what you're doing, and the audience will come.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Phoebe. Before I shift gears to asking the topic, panelists, topics related to media arts, back to Melody, can you give a piece of advice to those out there who, I know quite a few women out there, especially first generation, unlike the second generation, who are always used to social media, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of advice would you give them, and how can they get over the fear of getting their information out there and sharing their stories or accessing stories through social media?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of people I work with, they are afraid to put themselves out there because they don't want to seem like they're selling anything, or they don't want to seem like they're being pushy. So I always just explain to my clients that, hey, you're not being pushy if you have something that's really valuable that people need to hear, that people need to see. So if you can change your mindset about putting yourself out there, that, hey, I'm not like this cheesy salesperson, but I'm actually providing a resource, then that can kind of get you over that hump of pushing that post button. Now, I like what Phoebe mentioned, and now more than ever, people are using video technology and live video, and they're finally getting in front of the camera, whereas most people before were afraid to do that on social media. But with the power of technology and the power of just using your iPhone, anyone can get on screen. And again, it's scary, so you still might not want to push that live button. But if you can be confident about your message and clear about what you want to share, I think that will definitely help a lot.
Thank you so much. A very good advice. Next, let's shift gears. Related to media arts. Iris, let's start with you. For our audience who hasn't watched a segment on Asian Voices yet, it's very interesting and inspiring. Would you mind sharing briefly your breakthrough story as a screenwriter for Letters of from Iwo Jima, working alongside Clint Eastwood?
Well, I always loved writing, but you know, having my Asian parents, I majored in engineering, so I always had writing as a hobby. So I just kind of kept at it as a hobby, and I was taking classes at UCLA Extension while working a full-time job. And I learned screenwriting through these night classes, and then just decided to enter some competitions with a screenplay I had written. And I won a contest, and it just happened that one of the judges was an agent at CAA. So after winning the contest, she picked me up and heard about this project that Clint Eastwood was doing. Neither of us believed I was going to get the job, but you know, she put me up for an interview, and then I think they were really looking for some authenticity on Japanese culture. So that was really, you know, that worked in my favor. And plus it was something they weren't really, they had a main movie, Flags of Our Fathers, and this was sort of a different movie that I don't think they just used their leftover money for. So well, the long story made short is that I got the job, and it just snowballed from there. It just was more than I ever expected.
Just very briefly, can you just kind of tell us, what was your experience like working with Clint Eastwood? I mean, what was he like personally?
Oh, he's not that tough, mean, dirty Harry guy that you think of. He's actually a really nice, intelligent, thoughtful, quiet kind of guy. So you could tell when he's talking to you, he's really thinking about, what you're saying, and he listens, and he's very thoughtful. And it was so easy working with him. He gives everybody, on the set, he doesn't do minutia. He just trusts everybody that he's working with, and he's been working with the same crew for forever. So he just lets everybody do their business. And so I had, like, with the writers, including myself, he didn't give notes, which no one believes, but he doesn't give notes. You're allowed to write what you're writing, and then there may be some like technical things that you'll have to change and everything, but he trusts everybody he works with. So it's like a dream job working with Clint Eastwood, for sure.
I have no doubt about that. Would love to meet him someday, right? Anyway, so back to going to Christine. Now, you are one of the very first Korean American women, an Asian American filmmaker, to produce your own feature film, and your film is Wedding Palace. What was your inspiration behind it? Tell us about it.
Wow. Well, the inspiration for well, thank you for having me on first. The story inspiration actually came from a true life experience, not of mine, but somebody that I knew. And, it was inspired pretty much by my family, I would say, the wacky, kooky characters, in my family that a lot of times we don't get to see in mainstream media.
I mean, you've featured some of the known Korean American actors, including Margaret Cho, Brian T. I mean, how were you able to cast them? I mean, did you know them personally? How long did it take before you really got into producing the film, going into production?
Okay, it's been a little while, so let's see. I didn't know any of the actors, beforehand. I was just I had written the script actually many years ago. I had used it as a writing sample. It had gotten me all of my screenwriting jobs that I had. But nobody wanted to make a film with an all Asian cast. That was just like, a no-go. Plus, the role that Bobby Lee eventually played, everybody was trying to get me to cast that as like a white guy, and I rewrote it a gazillion times, and just finally decided to stay what I felt was authentic to the situation. And I just, contacted them. You do what you do, and you track people down, what can I say?
I watch your film, and it's really interesting and entertaining. So for those who haven't watched, I hope they'll watch it as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, Dr. Pei, known as the Asian Oprah. I mean, tell us, what's the story behind this name?
Hello, everyone. Welcome. And thanks, Kathleen, for having me on this very respectable panel of fabulous, beautiful Asian women. I think this is very rare. Usually I'm the token. So I'm happy to share the Zoom Brady Bunch Hollywood Squares screen. So I was actually introduced to Oprah as the Asian Oprah by Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, who wrote the actual foreword to this book that went #1, and I was actually on tour with it when COVID hit. And so I'm now grounded and doing all the stuff online and technology. And I can't say that I have not been comfortable. I just celebrated 433 consecutive weeks on the air with my syndicated award-winning show on CNBC and iHeartRadio called Take My Advice, I'm Not Using It, Get Happy with Dr. Marissa. And I think I over-answered the question.
Well, I'm going to stop you in that one, but I have a follow-up question for you.
Okay.
Very important. So
how has your chosen media field impacted you as a person in regards to feeling self-empowered in creating equality in the workplace as an Asian woman? And after your answer, Wendy, can you also answer this question? Okay, Dr. Pei first.
Sure. So, two things. One, traditionally, you know, we all know the Asian women stereotype, you know, don't be out in front, don't be loud, don't speak too much. When I used to date, and a white guy usually would say, I've always wanted to date an Asian woman, and I would say, you know, I'm not cooking for you, I'm not cleaning for you, and I'm not walking on your back unless it's with high heels. So the first part of the answer is, you know, getting through the cultural, and even though I was born in Canada and I don't appear very Asian in the way that I speak or dress or whatever it is, I still have those roots. And so, you know, I always saw my mom, you know, like, you know, me speaking on stage is like being a stripper. So I had to get over my whole Asian background, you know, very strong culture. That's number one. And then number two, I'm super self-critical. I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so what I had to do is, there's an African-American saying that says, when there is no enemy within, then nothing outside can hurt you. So I had to get to a place where I was okay with whatever I said after preparation, after, you know, practicing, and then get comfortable being less critical of myself. And things take time. And so with those two natural barriers, you just, you know, gospel according to Nike, just do it.
Thank you. How about you, Wendy?
Yeah, well, so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I think for growing up, I would look at, and speaking of Oprah, I followed Oprah and I always admired Oprah. And I thought I want to be like Oprah, but I didn't see any Asian women doing anything like that. And so a lot of my childhood and growing up, I just thought, well, yeah, maybe a white woman or a Black woman could do that, but not me. I should go the traditional, practical path because that's what I'll be allowed to do. And then over time, thankfully with podcasting and things like social media, like Melody was saying, I realized that I could start my own podcast. I could speak to people, whether it's like through Facebook Live or Instagram Live, and interview people and hear their stories and share my voice and then share the voices of other women of color. So I think previously there, and even now, there are not a lot of podcast hosts who are people of color, women of color, Asian American women. And hopefully through forums like this, however, that will change.
Thank you for your answer to that. Next question, I'd like to ask first, going back to Melody and then Phoebe. In lieu of this current racial tensions and especially the ignorance that drive hate crimes towards Asians in the US, what can we do as media creators to better educate those that perpetuate these beliefs? Can you elaborate on that, Phoebe and Melody?
Sure. So, you know, for me, I look at this as changing human behavior is obviously not easy. It's something that we work on for long periods of times to change our habits. But right now, the stakes are so high, right? The nation is more diverse than ever, yet there's so much segregation still going on. I think I read that a census data was showing that still most of our neighbors are of the same race. And we still have so much racism and so many things that are just, quite frankly, disgusting that are happening right now in this time period. It's shocking to me. So there's a lot of hard work that needs to be done, but there's a lot of things that certainly can make it better and also make it worse. And social media is that double-edged sword. And by that, I mean that a lot of us can use social media to discover new things and to think different, but we can also use it to flock together and have meetings with like-minded people and to block out what really exists, the diversity and the need for unification. So how do we stop something like this? You know, if I had that answer, I'd be running the country, right? But I think what we need to do as content creators, as people who are telling stories using video, podcasts, webinars, doing things like what you're doing helps bring attention to it. But we also have to recognize that sadly, this starts at the top. And you know, I don't want to get too political, but it starts with your vote, and it starts with really looking at who we have out there speaking for us and speaking for our nation. So I think that you have to start by curbing the animosity and creating unity. You know, that to me is such a beautiful thing, if you can bring people together and harmonize. But you've got to stop with calling it, you know, the Wuhan virus or the China virus, and really turning people against a particular race.
Very well said. Okay, I'm sorry. Is that, yeah, sorry. What about you, Melody?
Well, I'm going to speak a little bit differently on that, because most of the people that I work with in my business are small business owners, or they are service providers, and they're providing a service to people. And the majority of people that I work with, they want to work with people who want to work with them, but they also want to work with people that respect them. So one of the ways you can attract people to respect you is by using social media to share positive things that you're doing, to share positive messages, and to try your best to not engage in those conversations where people are kind of, you know, baiting you to argue, baiting you to take sides. And you see that all over the place. I scroll social media and I see posts every single day where you can comment and then someone will come at you and say, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to work with you anymore. So trying to really just focus on the positive things that you can do. And as I mentioned before, being a resource, that can definitely help us create a better narrative on social media, especially with businesses that are owned by minorities. Right now, we need to have positive perceptions of businesses owned by minorities.
Very well said. And like you mentioned, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and we're all quarantined, and a lot of people are focusing on social media, reading a lot, writing a lot. So, but I think we have to be very careful also of a cybersecurity issue is a big thing, right? And make sure that you're not being followed, or you're following the wrong people, wrong posts, right? And yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about that, but I think we should also spend more time on spending time with our family, catching up with our friends and family members, with our loved ones via social media, or in person, or over the phone. I think we should do something a little bit more positive and practical. Anyway, is there anybody else who would like to share on this topic?
I mean, I think as a content creator, we actually, and as a content creator being a woman of color, I think it's actually really sort of, incumbent upon me to create stories that amplify the voices of the most underserved. I mean, that's basically what sort of drives me. And, the humanization of, groups of people that are, typically marginally covered, I think goes a long way. Currently, for example, my current project is I'm doing a documentary about a marathon that takes place in San Quentin State Prison. I've spent the last 4 years inside the prison learning about the journey of these men, many of whom have been deemed violent felons, criminals who, are outcasts from society, but yet we, as, the COVID crisis actually has brought forward a connection that has actually already been there, but has amplified it. And I mean that in the sense of, why do people in prison matter to us? as free people. They've done bad things, but the truth of the matter is that what happens in prison does affect us very much. I mean, in the state of California, there are 67,000 staff workers that go in and out of those facilities in 8-hour shifts. So what happens in prison doesn't actually stay in prison. Prisons are very porous. And so, trying to amplify voices of people who are, most people think are killers, but show the root causes of violence. Are we as Asian Americans showing, where things come from, that we are actually individual people, not necessarily just, as a generic group.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I am looking forward to watching your new documentary. When is it coming out, by the way?
Thank you. Hopefully next year. I'm in post-production right now. I'm finishing up, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else who want to comment on that question of how we as media creators can better educate those out there? Dr. Pei?
Yes, great answers. I just want to piggyback on the flavor or the tone in which we post. I learned from Dr. David Simon, the co-founder of Chopra Center, to ask 3 questions. And before I post, before I send an email, before I speak, I ask, is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? And if I can't say yes to all 3, I don't hit send, I don't hit post. And I think that now in particular, it's very important, especially if we are making forays as Asians in media. We're not at the forefront, but we're definitely catching up. I think it's really important as far as what we say without being argumentative. Certainly standing and saying, no, you cannot say Kung Flu. My rule is, everybody has the right to free speech, but you have to accept the consequences of what you're saying. So you can have the intent and the impact and make sure the 2 of them match.
All right, so I have one question for Dr. Susie O, because she's an educator, being in the industry for a long time. Dr. Susie O, do you have any advice or as to how we can better educate our children, right, about these beliefs, that drive the hate crimes towards Asians in the U.S.? Do you have any?
Yeah, it has to start at home. The conversations, the courageous conversations. It also has to be immersed and weaved into our curriculum, not just afterthought or not just as a reactionary measure. In fact, in my chat, I asked our panelists that if they were invited to high schools during their career awareness. All the schools have a college prepared and career ready programs. What would be your key message? So it's just that giving students a lot of opportunities and exposure to this kind of awareness.
Thank you. I do agree with you totally that it has to start from the home. The school. And so I think we only have limited time left. So I would like to ask some questions, common questions for all the panelists. If you wish to not answer it, it's okay. But let's start with Christine. In your experience, have you seen any social change specifically as a result of your efforts and work in the media space? Do you still see Asian women in a workplace in hitting the so-called bamboo ceiling?
My day job is usually I work as a TV producer, and usually I am typically the only Asian female in the room. I mean, almost without exception. I mean, unfortunately, also in this business, a lot of times people work with who they know, and it's a very closed competitive, closed off world as a result. However, I am probably the most hopeful I have been in, I don't know, in a very long time about the prospects of Asian females in entertainment. I'm definitely seeing more Asian female directors and, media content creators, not just feature length, but also short film length, which is also really important. So I think that there's a good reason to be optimistic, for sure.
Thank you. How about you, Iris? Being a screenwriter and having to work with a lot of men in your workplace.
As Christine said, I think it's still very difficult. I was looking at statistics from the Writers Guild of America and their latest report on inclusivity. And women of color still only make up 7% of screenwriters. And I think when I began, it was more like 4%, 4 to 5%. So and this is on the film side, but on the hopeful side, television is getting a lot better. So I think women now make up 44% of TV writers. And so that's, it's definitely been increasing. And then people of color now make up 35%. When you're talking about Asian American, specifically, it's much less, of course. It's like 8% for both male and female in television. But yeah, so there's still a lot of work to do. Because also the position, the levels, like the writers of color tend to be around the middle, whereas the showrunners and execs are at higher levels are white men. But I think, as Christine said, it's getting more hopeful, especially post George Floyd. People are across the board trying to be more inclusive in general. So I'm saying, I think it's a good outlook for the future.
I will also say this, though. I mean, that's also why I do independent projects, because I can actually hire who I want to hire. And so, for example, on my films or feature that I'm doing right now, I'm working with an all-female producing team. We're all females. Some of us are very experienced. Some of us have no experience, but are bringing different skill sets to be part of a creative and business team. And so doing my own films allows me a great opportunity to give people chances that they normally wouldn't. Allows me to develop talent, and that's something I really enjoy. I very much enjoy that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I really wish there are a lot of more Asian American Pacific Islander women who would, take charge and pursue their dreams, right? Just like you and me and everybody else here. Okay, so next question we have, can maybe Dr. Pei and Wendy possibly start answering these questions. As you're well aware, there are a lot of Asian women out there who often struggle, right, with self-identity issues. What kind of advice would you give those who experience this often self-described in-betweenness?
Wendy, do you want to go first this time?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm actually biracial. My father's German and I'm Korean, and I lived in Pittsburgh until I was 11, and I was the only Asian. So I definitely didn't feel like I belonged. And then I moved to Hawaii, which is primarily Asian, and there I wasn't Asian enough. I was the weird Asian because I would raise my hand and answer the teacher's questions and things like that. So I think especially in the past, coming from being Asian American, coming from an immigrant background, we wanted, and I know I wanted to assimilate. And I didn't really I didn't want to learn about my Korean culture or eat the Korean food in front of my white friends, especially kimchi. But that's changed, thankfully. And yeah, like, but over time, I think with everything we're talking about, I look at my daughter, she's Korean American, and she's so proud of being Korean American. She's proud of the food. She's proud of, she watches Kim's Convenience and We Bare Bears, and she tells all her friends about it, and all her white friends and Hispanic friends are watching those shows. So it's a very different world, thankfully. And I think that the thing that I've been doing is I've been studying more about my Korean background, even Korean spiritual practices. I knew nothing about that growing up because I was just encouraged to learn about American culture, which of course we know is the white culture. So I think the more we can do to learn about our roots, if you will, and embrace that and see that as actually a gift that we can share with American society, then we can be happier even in who we are.
Right, I totally relate to you. Not, I mean, I'm a Korean American, but you know, I have a lot of friends who feel, you know, has been struggling with that. And I mean, for example, Phoebe, you're also Thai American, right? And then I'm sure you've gone through this as well growing up, or maybe not. What advice would you give to those women out there?
You know, I'm Thai, French, and English, and you know, I didn't have it quite as much because my father is from Thailand, and I really embraced wanting to learn about the Thai culture. So I actually identified more as being Thai than the French and English side. And for me, I was a hula dancer at the time. And so I embraced all these things that were, you know, outside of just being the white side of my ethnicity, if you will. I did take French in high school, but you know, for me, it was such a great thing to be of an ethnicity like that. And it actually helped me land my first job in television as a minority trainee reporter. So it really, I think you're going to ask possibly this question later, but it literally leveled the playing field and helped me get into the industry. And I was actually proud of my name and the ability to be one of, you know, very few Asian Americans in TV news at that time. I was constantly mistaken for Connie Chung. And so, but make no mistake, I did not have her salary.
Well, you've been doing great, and you're a great role model for a lot of aspiring journalists out there. Thank you. I think Dr. Pei has something to say as well.
Well, you had asked me that question with Wendy, and I just let her go first. I didn't mean to give up my spot.
Sorry about that.
It is actually a pretty strong question. I was brought up in Canada in a very small town, so I was very much Chinese, Japanese, dirty knees, look at these. I was embarrassed about being Chinese. People would ask me if I was Hawaiian. I would say yes. And that was outside of the home. Inside of the home, Chinese are very known. I think most Asian parents, tough, you know, tiger mom. I was told I was fat, ugly, and clumsy my entire life in order for me not to be. It's that negative motivation. And so for any child or any young woman who's Asian right now, I think media is not a supported field for traditional Chinese. You're not a doctor or a lawyer or a scientist, you're in media. So that's one thing that, you know, the ability to be okay, even if there's no approval on the inside, and then be okay if there's no approval on the outside. And the process that I would turn around and answer Dr. Susie O's question, what would I say at a career day? I would look a child in the eye and I would say, you can do anything you put your heart and mind to, because I wasn't given that. I wasn't told that. But my math teacher in grade 10, J.J. Bristow, I'll never forget this. He knew something was wrong, and he had me stay after class, and he said those words to me, and it completely changed the trajectory of my life. We are loving, lovable, and loved exactly as we are.
Thank you so much for inspiring words and words of wisdom, and we're very proud of you. Thank you so much. You know what? We don't have a lot of time, so for now, this is the last question before our Q&A time with the audience. For everybody, for all the panelists, if you can just keep the answer brief. Here's the question: if you could travel back in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Starting with maybe, again, going back to Christine.
I would say not to ask for permission. That's what actually, when I finally, said, hey, it's okay, make your first movie. Nobody's actually going to give this to you. Just go out and do it. And you don't need anybody to say, yeah, go out and do it. I wish I had started that, earlier, but that's what I would say.
Next, Iris. Uh-oh, is Iris there?
Sorry, I had to get the unmute button. I think I would have, I think I was kind of naive going into the business because I had come from the engineering world where it wasn't quite as difficult to be Asian or even Asian female. So I don't feel like I was equipped. I hadn't gone to film school either, so I think I would have, studied this a little bit more about the business side and equip myself more with, trying to be more confident about myself being an Asian woman and figuring out how to navigate that aspect of the industry.
Right. Actually, you answer one of the questions from the audience who are asking about what kind of advice you would give to someone who wants to work in the TV film industry, and what steps you took after graduating college to get to the career. So thanks for that. Next would be Melody. Dr. Pei, sorry, Dr. Pei, alphabetical.
So the piece of advice, what people think of you is none of your business. Mm-hmm. What you think of yourself is the most important thing. And if I can feel worthy in and of myself, if I can feel like I'm wrapped in a warm blanket of enoughness, then that's all that matters. So finding that part of me that is one of a kind, wonderful.
Great advice. Next is Melody, right?
I would tell myself that you can create your own opportunities. So when people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I thought I had to say a specific thing, maybe a lawyer or a doctor or something that was a set profession. But now I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a speaker, I'm a social media consultant. These were not things I was told you can be growing up. So just to know that you could really create your own career and opportunity.
Great advice. Next, who was it? Phoebe? Yeah, Phoebe, sorry.
I would say that you have to know yourself. So be yourself, know your truth, follow your passion, even when people tell you it can't be done, because I'm here to tell you it can. I achieved things that I didn't think I could do. And if I hadn't followed my passion and just said, I'm tuning out everything else, I wouldn't be doing the things that I love today. And then one last thing is I would, definitely be that voice of reason, follow it up by looking up things, research, and follow the facts.
Great, thank you. What about Dr. Susie O?
I would say, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me.
Very good advice. And last but not least, Wendy?
I would say make lots of mistakes. I think, and for a lot of Asians, our culture is very much about achievement and perfection. And when you're afraid to make mistakes, you just play safe and you don't take risks, and then you end up missing out on so many amazing opportunities, and you miss out on really being able to accept yourself even when you do make mistakes. So
yeah, great advice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? Okay, now let's move on to the questions, Q&A with the audience. We'll start off with the questions that was submitted initially with the registration form in that order. And unfortunately, we can't answer all the questions that was submitted, but let's see. Is the first one? Okay, this one is common question for everybody. Who do you admire most in the field of media and why? Can we go back to Christine again?
I actually don't know if I can answer that question, to be quite honest. I mean, there's a lot of people. So Michelle Obama, I guess, you know.
Okay, that's a good answer. What about Iris?
I also think that's a very difficult question. But considering the theme of today's conference, Sandra Oh is someone who has really broken a lot of barriers, and you know, she just goes out there. She's a strong Asian woman who's got lead roles in both television and film, and that's just amazing. There's a lot of women I admire, but that's just one that popped into my head right now.
What about Dr. Marissa Pei?
Is this limited to Asian role models? Or okay, so my honorable moniker, Oprah, because she brought spirituality, she brought whole people, whole persons, the integration of body, mind, spirit, soul to mainstream TV. So,
great. And the next question would be for, I would say, Melody, Phoebe. What technologies are accessible and affordable for women to create media content and even host their own programs? And what are some of the most popular media platforms that are currently in use?
So I can start with answering that one. I work with a lot of clients on creating video and media content on social media. And one of my goals is to make it as easy as possible. So I say you don't need thousands of dollars of technology. You don't need to buy the latest and greatest camera. When you're just getting started, you can just use your iPhone and you can buy a $20 tripod and a $30 light ring to create something that is watchable and that's viewable. So as you do more media, as you do more videos, you might want to invest in technology that is a little more expensive, but to get started, to get over that hump and to get over that barrier of I don't have the right things, just using basic things like your phone, a small light ring, and a microphone. And these are all things that are under $50. Makes it more accessible. I have a list of you, I can send it out if you do a follow-up. I can send you a list of things I recommend when you're just getting started.
That's a great, yeah, thanks for that. Actually, what we're gonna do is after the webinar, we're gonna post some of the questions and maybe answers from our panelists, and we'll post that on our website to share.
Good idea.
Some of the techniques we recommend then.
And Kathleen,
Yes.
if I can add to that. So what I think the second part of the question is what platforms, and there is a multitude of platforms that can be used. Obviously there's Zoom. I created my podcast, which now has about almost 450 episodes using Skype, and I love the technology there. Instagrams, Facebook Lives like we're doing here. So the whole key is don't let the technology holds you back, and don't let the fact that maybe you're shy to get in front of the camera. I remember the first stand-up I ever did, I was actually holding the reporter's hand off to the side. I was so scared because I'm an introvert, but just go for it, and you'll see that it's very easy to create your own following. It's really all about the content that matters the most.
Anybody else wish to answer under that question? Wendy, what about Wendy?
Yeah, so I'm for my podcast, I'm using Buzzsprout, and before I started a podcast, I thought it would be really hard to set up, but it's actually not that hard. So for anyone who's thinking about it, check out Buzzsprout. It's pretty inexpensive. GarageBand, very easy to use. So there's a lot of inexpensive tools out there.
Great, thank you. I didn't know about that one, but I'll add it to the list.
I think just a quick qualifier on platforms. If you are targeting a certain audience, I think it also makes a difference. So if you're going for the younger audience, Instagram is a must. If you're going for the older audience with your product and service, then that would be Facebook. Facebook Lives are free. Instagram Lives are free. LinkedIn is also, you know, depending on your clientele. So there's a lot available, but targeted platforms is smart.
Next question is, do you offer any mentorship or coaching for Asian women interested in media or applying digital media technologies to their own businesses?
Mm-hmm.
Melody and maybe they can give some advice on that.
Okay, so the question was if I personally offer any programs. So if anyone has questions about getting into social media, becoming a speaker, and really using social media to amplify your voice, I'm always happy to chat with them. I offer a lot of free resources. You know, I send out a newsletter with tips once a month. I post stuff all the time with resources. So just staying in touch with me and connecting with me on social media. I offer a lot of free resources. And again, if people reach out, they want to talk to me, I'm more than happy to if they're looking to really get into something that I'm doing.
That's great. Don't blame us for inundating your emails or social media with messages and questions. What about you, Phoebe?
So in the past, I've done internship programs. Obviously, that's changed since COVID, but I'm actually thinking about starting them up again in 2021. So I can't take on that many. Normally my office is in Rancho Santa Fe, so usually they would come there, and I have a video studio, and so there is an opportunity to do it, but really just one or two I would be taking on for next year, and I'll probably start looking at that in the end of the year, early part of January.
This question,
I did want to answer. I don't focus so much on the social media, but for people who want to get into speaking, writing, sharing your message, I do work with, or starting your own business, I do work with some clients on, especially women of color, Asian American women.
Great, thank you. I would like to direct this next question to the filmmakers, Iris and Christine specifically. What kind of advice would you give to those Asian American, Pacific Islander, or women of color out there who are looking to pursue new career opportunities in media as a screenwriter or filmmaker? Iris, you want to go first?
Yeah, I would suggest, first of all, to take classes. Like I did, you know, I worked during the day and then I went at night to UCLA Extension, and they have a great, they have a professional program. If you don't want to do the whole like MFA program, which is the professional program is like a 2-year course, and I have taught there. I've taught at UCLA MFA, and there's a lot of other places you can go to AFI as well. But I would definitely recommend learning the nuts and bolts before you just dive in there. And then like what I did was enter contests, because they you know, agents only want people who have been validated in some way.
Christine, can you?
Yeah, I would say for, aspiring filmmakers, I mean, get a camera or use your iPhone and literally just start telling stories. I mean, stories can be 30 seconds. Their stories can be, feature length. There's all different kinds of stories to tell in so many mediums, at this point. So I think it's just find a great story that you're really psyched about and, try to tell it in whatever medium speaks to you.
Right. This is a question for, I would say, anybody. If any one of you are invited to as a guest to a career awareness program, what would be your key message to the students? Anybody?
I can jump in.
Wendy?
I would say do what interests you and excites you. A lot of times I think people, especially from our background, look at things like, oh, well, how much money am I going to make? Which, you have to take that into consideration. But, or is this a prestigious job? Like, will my family be happy? But I work with a lot of people who have gotten degrees and masters and they do nothing related to that, but they kind of felt pressure by family to do that work. So I would say pursue something that really you're passionate about and interested in.
And then I'll add to that, one thing that I did when I was in school is that I had a lot of internships and part-time jobs that allowed me to get experience. So I'd say when you are in school, that is the time where you can kind of job hop and do different jobs and different part-time things here and there to see what you really like or maybe what you really don't like. And internships are great because you get your foot in the door. Another thing I would do is informational interviews where I reach out to professionals and maybe talk to them on the phone or ask them if I can have 30 minutes of their time just to get some information. But those are the things when you're a student, you can do that and you can use the excuse of being a student to be able to get those internships and those informational interviews.
Would you like to answer that too, Dr. Pei?
I think I answered it earlier, but I actually give exactly what Melody just said. Just use that time and say, I'm just a student to meet. I met with every single one of my professors, had bought them lunch or breakfast and just picked their brain. And as a result, I was the first one to be picked for projects and things like that because I stood out like a sore thumb. I have a real quick 3-thing model for kids. One is, what is my heart's desire? What makes me happy? That's one circle. The next circle is, what am I good at? And you have to be really careful about, am I good at this? Have I tried it? And the third circle is it going to make money? So you're not going to want to be a Swiss watchmaker or start an airline right now. So there has to be that anchoring of that practical third circle. And that's the kind of work I do when I coach people for career.
Before I go, I'd really like to thank everybody for participating on behalf of ACMA and KOWIN San Diego chapter. And also, before I go, I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite leadership quotes by Rosalind Carter. So she said, a leader takes people where they want to go, but a great leader takes people to where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be. I believe all the panelists here are great leaders, and I hope through this webinar, you're inspired and you will become a great leader yourself. But, and then, hold on, don't go yet. We have some announcements. Back to you, Jasmine and Megan. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
All right, so before we go, I just wanted to share our contact information with you all. If you wanted to get in touch with us, the ACMA email and the KOWIN San Diego chapter email is on the board. And to help us improve our future webinars and get to know what you all would like to hear about, there's a survey if you'd like to help us out. But before we go, I just want to let everyone know that is here that the Take One Media Internship Program that ACMA hosts is a 12-week program if you're interested in filming, marketing, learning how to develop your skills and personal portfolio. So if that's something you're looking for, an opportunity, especially in these times when in-person opportunities can be a little hard to find, you can go to the ACMA website or even email us at that email if you're interested in any programs regarding film, TV, or production, or content. Megan, if you have anything to share?
No, that's it. We just encourage you guys to connect with us. We really want to hear from all of you, and if you want to connect with any of our panelists, we can help get you in contact, get their social media information for you. But yeah, I want to thank you for tuning in and say a special thank you to all of our panelists. It was such a privilege to hear from all of you guys, and I learned so much from all of your amazing stories. So yeah, I just want to say thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.